Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you've never seen me before, then hi, welcome. So in today's video, I'm going to be telling you all the books that I read in May. Yes, it's that time of the month again, where I talk to you about all the books that I read this month. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just telling you my thoughts about all the books that I read. I pretty much filmed a reading vlog for almost all of these books, so not my very detailed thoughts. You can go ahead and watch those reading vlogs if you want to watch and listen to me rant about those books. In this video, I'm basically giving you a summarized version of that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get into it. Where's my phone? Where's my phone? Here we go. Okay, so I read 7 books this month. Now listen, okay, this month, not that it was like a bad reading month for me, but I didn't read a lot. Since this year started, I've been reading like 9 to 10 books, and each month I've been trying to up that, you know, just to kind of like challenge myself. I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. Like, I repeat this in every monthly reading wrap up, but I feel like I need to. It's just a number, okay? It really doesn't matter. Everyone has different lifestyles. Everyone has their own reading speed. Even if you read 1 book this month, doesn't matter. You're still a reader. This is for fun. Like, I'm not telling you this to be like, oh my gosh, I read 7 books this month, which isn't like that big of an accomplishment. But again, I'm not gonna beat myself up for it. Just telling you that normally I read more books, but this month I didn't. And that is for one very specific reason. Well, 2 actually, as to why I fell in a okay, no, I'm not gonna say reading slump. I heard this from someone else. They call it a reading hangover when it's a really good book. Let me explain. So normally I would say like I was in a reading slump this month, whether it was a good or bad book. But I heard someone say that like when it's a really good book, call it a reading hangover. So basically, yeah, after reading 1 very specific book this month that I'm gonna mention and talk about, obviously, I was in a reading hangover. And so that's why I didn't read a lot of books this month, because that, like, for a week and a half maybe, I just didn't read any book. Because again, I couldn't move on. I felt like no book could ever compare. Yeah, you know the feeling, okay? That was one reason. The second was when I started to go back into reading, then I got sick. Immediately got sick. I was feeling horrible. I had a headache. My throat hurt. Allergies. Just a bunch of other symptoms that I'll spare you the details of. But basically, I wasn't in the mood for reading again, because it's just, you know, I tried, but like, that's basically what I want to tell you guys and explain to you. So basically, from those 7 books, I read 3 thrillers and 4 romances. Also, the total pages was 2,586 pages. I just think, like, even though I only read 7 books this month, most of those books were pretty thick. Why did I do this? I don't know. Pretty long as well, so. And my average rating, 3.9. Close to it being 4 stars. I think that also speaks to like the fact that many of the books that I read this month, most of them were a high rating, which I'm glad about, you know? Let's begin with these 3 books, which I filmed a reading vlog for all these, because these 3 books were my most anticipated reads of the year. Yes, I know. Exciting, right? That sounded sarcastic, but no, really, like, I was beyond happy to get to reading these books. I had been waiting for them to come out, and I had been waiting for them to like be in my hands since last year. But let's start off with The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This is a thriller, as you can probably tell. If you don't know by now, Holly Jackson is one of my favorite authors. I love the way she writes thriller books. I've read the entire Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. I read 5 Survive. Now I have read this one. So safe to say that I love her writing. I love how she always finds a way to include the reader into like what's happening in the book. I did get Pip and Robbie vibes from like main character in this book and another character in this book, Ash. Also, like the female main character, which is Belle, didn't give me Pip vibes at all. Like, she is so different from Pip. But basically, so this is about Belle. Her mother, Rachel Price, had disappeared, vanished without a trace 16 years ago. And Belle, she was only 2 years old when she witnessed her mother disappearing, but like she like has no memory of it. Obviously, you know, she was only 2 years old. The case is being dragged from the past, you could say, because Belle and her family have agreed to a true crime documentary about the disappearance of Rachel Price. But then the most insane and impossible thing happens. Rachel Price reappears. Now it's like obviously more interesting for, you know, the people filming the documentary, for everyone involved, for the whole world, because it's like, what happened to her? Rachel Price gets to tell her story. Belle has lived with her father ever since her mother disappeared, so she's not close to her at all. She starts getting suspicious of the story Rachel is telling, and it just goes on from there. But yeah, this was really good. I did really like it a lot. The ending, like towards the ending, it was really fast paced, but I I will say though, like halfway into it, it was a bit slow for me. It dragged on for a bit. In some way, it could have picked up more. But I will say, like, the ending, things escalated really quickly, got really intense. That was the point where I couldn't put it down. You know, a lot of plot twist, which honestly did not see them coming. That's another thing that I expect from Holly Jackson books. And one thing that I know for sure I will get is a really, really good plot twist. It was a really satisfying ending too. Every loose end tied up, although some things were left to open interpretation. Hi, I'm editing this, and I just wanted to say something that I forgot to mention. I don't know how I could have forgotten because it was a very important point that I actually ranted about in my reading vlog. But basically, it was the fact that I disliked the main character, Belle. And it's hard, you know, when you don't like the main character, it's from her point of view, so it just makes it harder. She was just very annoying. The things she did, how she acted, was not it for me. So yeah, just wanted to say that. Okay, back to the video. My rating for this, 4 stars. Okay, I wouldn't say it's my favorite Holly Jackson book because, like, I did have really high expectations for this book, and not that it let me down, but it wasn't what I expected. I still enjoyed it. I still would recommend it. If you haven't read any Holly Jackson book, you really need to. You really need to get to that. Next, we have Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. So this is a romance book, again, as you can tell, but also just because if you know Lynn Painter, you know that she's literally the queen of, like, rom-com YA books. So I was excited to read this book because I was like, yay, another Lynn Painter book. Like, you know, must be so cute, like, just fun. And, you know, I assume this was pretty quick because it's a pretty, I like how floppy it is. I love it, actually. But it's, like, you know, it's not that thick. So I was like, fun. It's just gonna be a quick, fun romance. So I was really excited, but I was a bit doubtful and, like, nervous just because this isn't YA. It's adult romance. And so I don't know if, like, that was gonna make or break it. You know, the fact that I would end up loving this book or made a difference at all in the fact that I love Lynn Painter's writing, but now I'm sure. And it did make a difference, and for the worse. But anyway, so this has dual POV, which is one of the good things that this book has, and it's about Sophie and Max, basically his side job is to object at weddings. Kind of started as like a favor to someone close to him. He didn't intend on doing this, and word spread to Sophie, it got to Sophie, you know, about Max and what he does. She needed him because she didn't want to get married to her fiance. She found out he cheated on her yet again, but she couldn't be the one to do it because her future father-in-law is also her dad's cutthroat boss. I honestly, I read it from here because one thing I'll say, this wasn't a memorable book at all. It didn't stick with me. Everything about this book, the characters, the plot, just like completely vanished from my mind. But anyways, okay, so she contacts Max. He does it. And then months later, actually, he offers her to work with him, and it takes some convincing, but she agrees to it. So basically they start working together, both of them start objecting at weddings. You know, it just goes on from there. But there's a small bump in the road, and that's the fact that Sophie doesn't believe in true love at all. But I'm not gonna say anything else. This book just, like, it had a really strong start, and it is a really interesting premise. The whole wedding objecting plot kind of just fell flat. I thought it was gonna have more of a main role in this book, but it didn't. That could have been more interesting, kept the book more interesting, because I felt bored. And then kind of like got into a fake dating trope between the two of them. I feel like all the plots and like tropes that this book had wasn't really like fully developed. I felt it was weakly written and underwhelming, and the ending, something came out of nowhere. I mean, it was mentioned in the premise, but I thought it was, again, gonna have more of a main role, or at least like mentioned halfway into the book, and, you know, slowly develop and lead us through that problem so that it can just blow up in the end and we can solve it and whatever. No, it kind of just appeared out of nowhere at the end of the book, and then it got quickly resolved, and so that's why I felt like the ending was so rushed, and I do not like that at all. But by that point also, like, I did not care truly because I had not connected to these characters. I felt like there was no character development in this book, mainly because I just felt also the relationship between these two characters was purely physical. I got one moment of like emotional connection between these two characters, nothing else. And that's another thing that I do not like, because my characters, well, not my characters, but characters that I read about, I need for them to connect emotionally. I've mentioned this so much, but I guess it still has like that Lynn Painter signature, fun, cute, sweet, unique feel to it. It is still her writing, so I enjoyed it. I did not hate this book. She does still include a lot of pop culture references and things that only a romance girly would know, which again is a signature Lynn Painter thing, so that I did also enjoy. So I gave this 3.5, but I think I'm gonna change it to a 3-star rating. Now thinking about it more, you know, now that it's been like weeks actually since I finished this book, just changing it on Goodreads, I would still recommend it. I guess it's a maybe, it's a maybe. Okay, the next book that I read, Funny Story by Emily Henry. See, the fact that it can make, like, still make me react like this when I even mention the title of this book, I haven't stopped thinking about this book, and it still makes me giddy just like thinking about it. This book was perfect, absolute perfection, and I did not expect anything less. If you know me by now and you've watched my other videos, Emily Henry is my favorite author, like ever. All her books have never disappointed. I adore all her books, and they will always have a very special place in my heart. This was the book that I was most excited to read this year. Her books are just like one of a kind. There is no other feeling like the one that I get when I read Emily Henry books. I'm not gonna go into an Emily Henry rant. Out of all her books, this is definitely like, I feel like the most interesting, the most unique, because this is a really, really intriguing premise. Like, this one, I've never read anything like it. Because get this, okay? This is about Daphne and Miles. And Daphne, her fiance, well, really ex-fiance, every time someone asked them, you know, how they met, you know, Peter always told the story, and she just really loved always how he told their story, up until the moment he realized he was actually in love with his childhood best friend. Like, Alexa, play The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived by Taylor Swift, please.
Here's a station based on The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived by Taylor Swift.
That is not the song, but thank you anyways. The thing is though, that childhood best friend, which is now his girlfriend, she had a boyfriend at the time who also, she dumped him, which is Miles. Daphne moves in with Miles, the only other person she knows in this town. You know, they're basically in the same boat, the same situation. Really sad, but it's unique because it's like, what a way to get to know one another. They become roommates. So this has the roommate trope, fake dating, forced proximity, okay? So like, so all the really, really good tropes. Basically, it just goes on from there. Like, I'm really not gonna say anything else. Since the moment I started reading this book, I fell in love with Miles. He gave me so much Nick Miller vibes from New Girl. I saw other people also saying this, so I know I'm not the only one. I loved him, but also just like, he is uniquely Miles, and you know, just add him to my never-ending list of favorite book boyfriends. Just go ahead and do it. He's already there at the top. This book also felt just more of a rom-com. Like, it was so like, hey, I'm not saying this, you know, because of the title. I know it's ironic, but it was really funny. Like, I genuinely really laughed. It had more of that rom-com vibe, which all of her books do, but I don't know, this one felt more like it. Ooh, the banter in this book. Look, I'm an Emily Henry banter enthusiast, okay? Her banter is top tier, but this one, like the banter in this book, Daphne is an amazing female main character. I absolutely loved her because I related to her so much. I thought while reading this book, like, hey, now that I've been listening to the Tortured Poets Department all month repeatedly, one of my favorite songs from the album is The Prophecy. Engraved in my mind now. I just could relate to that song so much. I thought, you know, Daphne, I feel like could relate to it also as well. So another reason why she is so me, I'm her. Final thing I'll say, another thing that I love about Emily Henry books is that character development is flawless. It is done flawlessly, it is done beautifully, so you really get to know the characters like so deeply, connect with them. Left me with that empty feeling inside after I finished it. I cried, like you can see my reactions. The way she writes men, period, but also the way she writes just like period in general. Some of the quotes on here blew me away. This is about breakup, about broken family dynamics, about friendship, just so many other things that someone who is entering into her 20s can relate to a lot. It's closer to home now. So yeah, I really resonated with a lot of the quotes on this book. This changed my life. I am not the same person I was before I read this book. And oh, my rating, 5 stars. Obviously. I literally just saw like how long I spent talking about Funny Story, 16 minutes straight. After Funny Story, like I said, I was in a reading hangover, and I kind of just let myself fall into it because, again, I had read such an amazing book that I was like, let me wallow in this empty feeling that I'll never read another book like this. Anyways, I had heard so many good things about Annie Jimenez, and this was my first book, but it will definitely not be my last. I loved it, and you know what? It was the perfect book to read after Funny Story because it gave me Emily Henry vibes. It did feel a bit like it. It did get me out of my reading hangover. I really, really enjoyed this. It was so cute. So basically, this is about Alexis and Daniel. It's a small town romance. I love small town romances. Like, I love them with all my heart. It's opposites attract. Basically, Alexis, she works in the medical field. She comes from like a line of like really, really well-known surgeons and doctors. Like, her family has worked at the same hospital for generations and generations, and it's her legacy to work at this hospital. It's a lot of pressure on her. She also lives in the city. Now Daniel, he lives in a small town. He is kind of like the mayor of this town just because he helps everyone in this town, like deals with everything in this town. But he also runs this bed and breakfast that has been in his family for generations and generations, and he feels like this responsibility to keep this bed and breakfast going. Their worlds intertwine. One night when Alexis is driving from a funeral, I think, her car breaks down. Daniel helps her tow her car out, and then she kind of goes to this bar. That's where she meets Daniel for the second time. They get to talking. They spend the night together. He invites her to his place. This man was taking care of a baby goat as a favor to someone, and he put pajamas on the baby goat. Like, what else can I say? He was just like adorable, and I expected it just because small town men are absolutely everything. They are to me. I loved him so much. So yeah, at first it's just like this short-term fling, make it clear, but you know, it goes on from there. But yeah, like I said, Daniel, absolute sweetest. Like, he was so adorable. This man was the sweetest thing to ever exist. One of the sweetest fictional men I've read about. He did so many gestures for Alexis that I was just like, God. If you don't marry him, I will. And like I said, also, it reminded me of Emily Henry because character development I also really enjoyed and loved in this book. The characters, both of them, deal with a lot throughout this book. Got to, you know, basically go through all that with them. When they overcome it all, I had connected to them. I was rooting for them. The ending just like really wrapped up beautifully. I gave this 4 stars, and I would really recommend. Next, Night Shift by Annie Crown. Part of Your World was a really good decision that I made. Night Shift, not really. I was really excited to read this book because from the second that I saw the cover, it gave me Nayli vibes, which, if you don't know, is a ship name for Nathan and Haley from One Tree Hill. And I love those two so much. One of my favorite TV show couples ever. Basically, in the show, Nathan is the basketball player and Haley is like this bookish introverted girl. So I was excited, but it let me down. I was so disappointed. It did not go at all the way I expected it to go. I did not completely hate this book just because it did have that whole bookish aspect. And when, you know, that came up in the book, I was like, can relate, you know, because I'm a bookish girly myself. But that was really the only thing that saves this book from it being like a 1 star. I gave it 1.5, so, but that half is like for the whole bookish girl aspect. The rest of it, it was not it for me. It was just like absolute trash. The main thing that I did not like about this book, that I hated, was because I felt like the characters in this book, like the relationship between them, was purely physical. I did not feel the chemistry at all. There was no emotional connection at all. I just didn't feel like they had any interest in getting to know each other. If they don't connect, how can I connect with them? Wasn't memorable, wasn't fun to read. This doesn't happen often, but I literally skipped a bunch of scenes, again, that were like just, I did not care for. And so I was like, great. So yeah. That's it, 1.5, would not recommend, but hey, if you want to go ahead and read it, go do that. If that is your thing, that is your cup of tea, go ahead. I will not stop you. I can't stop you. So after that, I did not want to read a romance book. I was not in the mood anymore because Night Shift kind of ruined it for me. So I decided to go with a thriller. I was like, I need this. Oh, forgot to mention, Part of Your World, Night Shift, and this book, I filmed a reading vlog for all those 3 books. This was my first Riley Sager book, but again, will not be my last because I really did enjoy this. This is about Casey Fletcher, and she's a recently widowed actress. After her husband died, her life went downhill. At one point, she got fired from her job because she showed up drunk. Bad press too. Her mother basically was like, go to our family's lake house, rest, get away from the public eye. But that place at her family's lake house and just at Lake Green was where her husband unfortunately died. While she's there, aside from drinking all day, she passes the time not by reading or watching TV or doing remotely anything else. She spies on this couple who live in the house across the lake. This is an accurate description, or what's the word? Depiction? What? Description? Depiction? Like, hold on. Yeah, it's depiction. Depiction. Am I saying that right?
Depiction.
Depiction. Of the house of the couple. The back part of it, it's almost completely made out of glass, like the windows. So Casey Fletcher, from her back porch, uses her late husband's binoculars to spy on them at night, because during the day the sunlight reflects off the windows, you can't see anything inside, but during the night, if someone turns on any light in any room, you can see basically everything with the binoculars. They're a very interesting couple. Catherine is a former supermodel. She's also pretty well known. And then Tom is a tech innovator. As she spies on them, things don't seem as perfect as they seem, because she does meet them. Oh, forgot this. One day she saves Catherine from drowning and they become acquaintances after that. But anyways, yeah, as I was saying, she just can't help herself. She just continues spying on them until one day Catherine goes missing. And then she starts getting suspicious of Tom. So it just goes on from there. But oh my gosh, this book, I really thought like this was gonna go one way and it went a completely different way, and it just like threw me off. It was a roller coaster. It was crazy. It was insane. Absolutely wild. I just did not expect it at all. Like the way this went took me by surprise, like really. Towards the ending was when things like really did start to escalate and they got really intense. So many plot twists. A lot of them I did not see coming at all. Like trust me, you will not see this coming. If you're one of those people that guess like every plot twist in any thriller book, this one won't get you. It won't. Like you won't be able to do it. Let me know if you do. If you actually do end up reading it and you guess everything that happens in this book, because that will be amazing. Also, this has a before and now timeline, which makes it really interesting because it starts really intriguing. It just jumps back and forth. You figure things out as you read the book, but also it just gets more and more confusing because they don't really give a lot of details in the now timeline. Obviously, it kind of just like, it gives you enough that you stay intrigued and really interesting and really hooked, but you still don't know anything that's going on and you still don't know enough. By the end, like my brain hurt. I love when a thriller does that to me. Would really recommend this. And again, we'll definitely be reading other Riley Sager books, and I rated this 4 stars. And finally, the last book that I read this month was Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This was the last book in the Natural series. Oh my gosh. I am so sad because I was dreading reading this book just because I did not want to finish the series. Thank God though, I just found out it has a novella, small one, you know, it's a novella, but at least I get more of like these characters. Currently reading it but cannot talk about it because I haven't yet finished it. So I'm gonna have to, I guess, talk about that in my June wrap up. Now even more dreading finishing that novella because after that there is nothing more. I had grown so attached to this series and these characters. These characters now do have a very special place in my heart. Since I first read the first book, The Naturals, I was hooked. Like it was so good. Never did it disappoint. I loved every single book. Like this series in general is a 5-star read for me. Not every book in the series is a 5-star read, only this book. So yeah, that's my rating, 5 stars. Now I will be thinking about these characters forever. And this book, it's the thickest out of all the books in the series. So I knew, and it was like the last book, which meant like a lot of things happened. Everything had to, you know, come to a closure, which it did. And it hurt, but I did love the way it ended. It wrapped up so beautifully. It was a very satisfying ending for all the characters. I can't tell you much about it because, you know, it is the last book in the series, but I will tell you the general premise of the series. So basically it's about these group of teenagers who have natural abilities, natural gifts. One's a profiler, one's really good with numbers and statistics, another's like a human lie detector, and the other one's really good at reading emotions, which is Michael, which I'll just say, I'm Team Michael all the way. He is my favorite character. I love him so much. He is the only one that really genuinely makes me laugh. So I just had to say that. Group of teenagers who, like I said, have natural abilities, and because of that, the FBI recruited them and they're in the Naturals program. That's the program. But it's like a hidden program. They basically at first worked cold cases only, but by the end of the book, they got more involved with real ongoing cases, different crime cases that they solve in each book. This final book, everything that was building up since the first book, I was expecting a lot. The way the third book ended, a lot of things had to happen in this book, a lot of things had to be resolved, and just like, it was insane. It was a roller coaster. Even though it was like pretty long, I did not feel bored like at any second or at any point. I could not put this down. It felt so good to be back in this world. Debatable whether it's like the best book in the series. I really loved the third one, All In, just because of the setting. It was really unique and I really liked it. But honestly, I think, yeah, the fact that this was the only book in the series that I rated 5 stars, the other ones were really close for them to be a 5-star read, but this one, it was a 5-star read. So I guess, yeah, it is the best book in the series in my opinion. The way it ended, it was what I wanted for each of the characters. I will miss these characters so much. Oh, also, each book has a you point of view. That's always interesting when you read the books. Like, it keeps you intrigued, but you don't know enough about what's going on. And yeah, I really recommend this series. If you haven't read it yet, please do. And also, the reason why I said I was Team Michael, this also has a bit of romance. There's kind of like a love triangle. If you're a romance girly like me, but also love thrillers, this is the series for you. Those were all the books that I read in May. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you stuck to the end, I love you so much. Just because, you know, sometimes I talk a lot. I try not to. But yeah, let me know what was your favorite book that you read this month and what was your least favorite. Always curious. Always would love to know. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And I guess that's all I have to say. See you guys in my next video. Bye. I talked so much in this video that when I first started filming this, it was daytime. And as you can tell, now it's nighttime.